In 1974, Lotus was pretty much on top of its game. It had won 3 of the last 4 Formula One World Championships, but its road car range was looking a little bit dated. The Europa and the Elan had their roots in the 60s and used drivetrains from Ford and Renault respectively. So it was time for Colin Chapman to do something a little bit different. And what he did was this.
I was 5.5 when the Elite hit the streets and was just about old enough to be paying attention. I remember it being on the cover of a magazine and knowing for sure that it came from the future, or at the very least from Thunderbirds or Joe 90. The details may have passed me by at the time, but actually I wasn't too far wrong. Where Jaguar had been wrong-footed by the oil crisis with its thirsty 5.3-litre V12 in the XJS, Lotus had been very smart indeed. The 907 engine fitted to the Elite had just 4 cylinders and 2 litres, but it was a twin-cam 16-valve lightweight alloy engine that was so efficient it didn't need any modifications at all to meet the new stringent Californian emissions regulations. Lotus had cleverly tried out this engine on Jensen Healey customers first, and that enabled them to iron out some early teething troubles with cooling before putting it in a car with their own badge on.
So let's talk about what it's like to drive. It's got very much a sports car feel, but with a veneer of sophistication, if you like. So the controls all feel very direct, the throttle's responsive, you've got that fabulous engine note that always reminds you that it's a performance car first and foremost. The gear change is a short throw, quite precise, reverse a little bit tricky to get to. I'm going to demonstrate that now. But nice to put through the gears like that. Revs very willingly. The steering is very direct as well. Turns in nicely, evenly. Quite lightly weighted. Power steering on this version, the 503. The base 501 came without power steering. Get through there because nice narrow car.
The engine puts out about 160 brake horsepower. The Elite weighs just over a tonne, so that's a pretty decent power to weight ratio and gives a 0 to 60 time of less than 8 seconds. But 160 bhp in regular road-going trim is what Porsche's engineers, no fools at engine building, were getting out of 25% more displacement in the 944 over 10 years later, and less in US spec.
Right, let's give it a little bit of beans, 40 limit, and there's wildlife around, so I'm not going to cane it. But at least I've got a clear road ahead. Beautiful morning. It's a 5-speed gearbox. Probably 4th is about right for this, but 5th gives decent motorway cruising. A little bit noisy on the motorway, not helped by the diff in this being slightly worn, but not a bad motorway cruiser. It's quite an experience driving one of these on the motorway because your eye level is roughly hub level with trucks. It does make you feel a little bit vulnerable. But yeah, really nice. Actually quite a smooth gear change, certainly around sort of 2nd and tell you that the gearbox is from a Maxi and awful. That's not really true. The actual cogs inside are shared with a Maxi, but the connections, the linkage, and I think the casing as well, are Lotus's own, and a world away from the cable change Maxi gearbox that's famously dreadful.
It wasn't just the engine that featured advanced technology. The body shell itself was made using a new manufacturing process that cast the shell in two halves, top and bottom, and glued them together along a seam that formed part of the wedge-shaped styling. This gave it an extraordinary drag coefficient of 0.30. By the time Audi was boasting of such low drag in the skinny-tyred version that nobody bought of its 100 saloon, the Lotus Elite had completed its full model cycle and finished production. It might have been made of glass fibre, but the body was also extremely safe. The backbone chassis was supplemented by a ring of steel roll hoop through the B-pillars and across the roof, and thick steel bars through the doors. In the US regulations, a car's steering wheel was allowed to travel 5 inches towards the driver in a 30-mile-an-hour crash. The Elites moved just half an inch. Lotus won the Don Safety Trophy, an honour given the following year to that rather more obvious safety car, the Volvo 240.
The brakes aren't bad. They need a fairly firm push. This is possibly due a change of brake fluid. And a bit of a service, although it shouldn't be too bad. Been a couple of years probably since it's had a brake fluid change.
I think the Lotus Elite is an extraordinary car. It looks extraordinary and still turns heads today. It features all sorts of advanced technology and clever design, all of which further its purpose of moving the game on in bringing sports car capability to the executive car, or giving executive comfort to the sports car.
For a long time these cars were almost worthless. You could pick them up for nothing, and there's still many of them languishing in fields and barns and sheds around the country. About 2,500 were made over the life cycle, and about 10% of those roughly seem to be remaining known to the DVLA, about 100 left on the road. Which seems a shame, because it's a fantastic car to drive, and the styling, I guess, is, well, perhaps it's more striking than beautiful. But in these days, this wedge shape and with the upsweep window line has become ubiquitous in family hatchbacks. So Oliver Winterbottom saw the future, but he saw it 30 years before it arrived.
When the Elite was new, it was the most expensive 4-cylinder production car in the world. Now it's about the same sort of money as an MGB, or rather less than a Ford Capri. Nothing against MGBs, I've had one myself in the past, but that just means that I know from experience that the Lotus Elite is in another league entirely.
Let me know what you think. Love it? Hate it? Want one? Wouldn't touch it with a barge pole? Let me know. Thanks for watching. See you next time.